This is the truth about the martial arts business, brought to you by the Martial Arts Teachers Association and Empower Kickboxing. I'm your host, John Graden. In the 40 plus years since my first karate class, I've discovered that in addition to some great people, the martial arts has more bullies, blowhards, and sociopaths than a prison yard. I've dealt with most of them, and you'll hear those stories right here on the Truth About the Martial Arts Business podcast. This show is a no-agenda show for martial arts school owners and instructors. If anything, you might consider this to be an attack the agenda show, because if you know me, that's what I do. I often think the reason traditional gi pants are cut so high is because of all the BS we're forced to wade through to get to the truth. I'll also share with you a critical teaching skill each show. This will help you improve your skills as an instructor. Each show, I'll share a teaching tip or tactic straight from the Martial Arts Certification Program at matacertification.com. Okay, enough of the setup. Let's get on the floor, line up, and bow into class. If there's one word that school owners need to use as a filter for every decision moving forward, that word is simplicity. How can we make this simple? First, let's define what is not simple in a martial arts school. 1. Teaching traditional skills that take years of practice to gain any competence is not simple. 2. Perpetuating useless complex blocks, stances, and strikes is not simple. 3. Holding back advanced skills as though they are some kind of secret in order to stretch out your path to black belt is not simple. What is simple? Empower Kickboxing. It's a real martial art that is designed to be simple to teach and easy to learn. Empower Kickboxing is martial arts you can master faster. Check it out at empowerkickboxing.com. This week, the truth about the martial arts business is that simplicity is the new mantra for keeping and attracting martial arts students in this crazy COVID era. Our guest today, Gino Guevara from San Antonio, Texas, is a Drew Reed black belt. He's a school owner. And he started to realize that his students were losing their enthusiasm for doing kata or forms. And then COVID hit, and he had to teach the forms backwards on Zoom. And I'm sure that's an experience many of you have had, because I've heard many instructors describe for me the nightmare of teaching a form like Batsai backwards. So it became clear to Gino that he needed to change his curriculum. And he chose to change it from traditional Taekwondo, the Jun-Ri system, to Empower Kickboxing. He made the change during the lockdown period and did not lose a single student. When he reopened, he was able to reduce the number of classes he had to teach, because Empower Kickboxing has all ranks in one class. So you just split them by age. Kids in one class, adults in another class. All ranks in the class. Makes no difference. Everybody's engaged. And then, to top it off, Gino created the most exciting, innovative approach to testing and graduations that I've ever seen. Wait until you hear this. It is the bomb. Okay, that's enough for me. Let's dive into my interview with Gino Guevara. And how old were you when you joined the Jun-Ri school?
I was 10 years old.
Okay, well, let's fast forward. Then, why did you decide to make this a career? And I'm assuming that is a full-time career for you.
Yeah, I do it full time. I know I've always once I became a teenager, my instructor, he hired me, and it was just something that I had always wanted to do. Even back when I was in high school, when he hired me as an instructor, I literally drew out what I wanted the school to look like, and so I just kind of knew this was my path. Now, I didn't go straight to opening up a school. Mm-hmm. I went in, I worked full time. I'd say probably when I was 20, a friend of mine that had started at that same school there was an organization out in Arizona that I went to work for about 5 years that I started full time. And that's really where I saw how you could run a full-time martial arts school and make a really good living at it. He ran it really professional. And so that's where I got my view of how a martial arts school should be run like a business. Then I came back to Texas and I got my degree. And once I got my degree is when I had decided to open up a small school. So
what was your degree in?
It's psychology.
Oh, how interesting.
It really helped. I kind of knew getting my degree that I wanted to do. I was going to do it, but it really helped me understand the psychology behind teaching and influence. And, so that was that's why I decided to do it more towards to help me with the school, because I knew that was going to be an important part of communicating with students.
Yeah, because you had been trained in how to run the business by your friend and the association in Arizona. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah, so that was the perfect compliment. That's a smart degree. Wasn't it cool to go to high school with all your friends who have to work at McDonald's, and you go to the karate school and people call you Mr. Invalid when you're 16? That was a trip.
Yeah, that was definitely, I did have the coolest job.
It was the coolest job. So this was a Junri school. So when you opened your school, you taught the Junri system, correct?
Yes, I did.
Master Yi was very much a forward thinker. We had many conversations over dinner and lunch and at meetings, and he was so focused on having the body of a 30-year-old at the age of 120 that it was tragic. He literally attacked by the shingles, and this one of the most painful afflictions you can have. And the last guy in the world you'd think would ever have to face something like that would have been Grandmaster Junri. So an homage to him. He had a marvelous influence. And one of the things that he did that we found so interesting back in the day, as they say, was his modern forms. And these were interesting forms because they didn't pull the hand back to the hip. They opened the hand and put it by your face. I heard Muhammad Ali say this: an open hand covers more of your face than a fist. And Junri had his hands open. And I also remember Muhammad Ali, after a fight, he knocked somebody out. And in the post-fight interview, I want to thank Karate Master Junri for teaching me the acupunch. It was just classic, the acupunch. What the heck is that? But he was obviously a forward thinker. He was designing his own set of modern forms, but they still kind of followed the clunkiness of holding the punches out and turning in, blocking, and advancing with blocks and kind of the things that regular kata have. In the beginning, you're doing the Junri system. At what point did you start to think that you may need to modify this or supplement it?
It wasn't probably till about 2 years ago that what I noticed is, and I guess I wasn't really aware of it, because that's all I knew. And so there's a difference between that being all I knew. I started to notice that I was struggling, it was having assistants, bringing them up, teaching them the advanced curriculum, and then keeping them for years. I was struggling with. And so I dabbled with trying to break it up into, of course, I heard of the rotating curriculum, and that kind of worked with the Junri system, but it really didn't. And so I also knew that the industry was kind of evolving. I could see the writing on the wall, and I knew that what I was teaching wasn't, as far as from a retention standpoint, it wasn't what I noticed that the industry was changing. And let me give you an example of what I mean by that.
Sure.
I knew the Karate Kid. Today's kids, they don't see the Karate Kid like I used to. What they see is, they see the UFC. That's what today's students see. They see the, the hands up, the head movement, the ability to strike, to be able to take people down. That's what I believe that's what the modern student mixes what they consider to be martial arts.
I think we're dealing with the most educated market in martial arts history in the United States. They know it. I mean, they've been trained for 20 years that no one style is the best, and wearing a gi is kind of counterproductive. And what you learn in a karate school is the exact opposite of everything that you see on the UFC.
What intrigued me about it is because I could deny it, but then I started to kind of hear what your thoughts on it. And I actually think that Empower Kickboxing is ahead of its time, where you saw this trend way before I guess you just brought it together with your experience, but I think it was way ahead of its time, and you'll see it starting to evolve into this new way of that's reality, right? I mean, that's basically what it is that's what kids are seeing. That's what parents are seeing. That's what they believe is martial arts, not the Karate Kid anymore.
There is a mistaken idea that you have to advance in rank in order to learn advanced techniques. I don't believe in advanced techniques. I believe in advanced applications to basic techniques. I don't think jab, cross, uppercut, hook, ridge hand, chop, palm heel, knee strike ever gets boring, as long as you can mix it up and you're continuing to work these great skills. So that's been my belief for a long time. I mean, I was just really dedicated karate guy. I went to high school with a Florida karate t-shirt on, a pair of Century gi pants, when they had the kind of jeans look about them and they laced up in the front, and wooden Japanese gaitas. Sandals, walking down the hallway in high school. Every step was just, and I wasn't that big or anything, but I was lucky that people thought I could kill them with one blow because Bruce Lee helped out. So I benefited because I think if a wrestler jumped me and pounded me, I probably would have left martial arts forever, discouraged. But I taught the same katas, the same blocks and everything. And then a guy comes into your class and you teach him front stance, and then you teach him how to cross his arms and do a downward block. And he will practice it in his first class. And he goes home, honey, look, I learned how to do this against somebody who's going to kick me in the groin. Ready? Kick me in the groin. And the kid's going to get punted. So it was insanity, but I completely bought into it until pretty much Joe Louis moved to town, and I started to see, because we started working out 3 times a week for a decade. And that, he told me that the first time he went into a boxing club, they handed his head to him. And this was the greatest black belt in history, the greatest fighter, heavyweight. The rumor was Joe Louis, go ahead and block his side kick. He'll break your arm with his side kick. It's just mythology. And it was amazing to me. But he said, I went there and they just handed my head to me. They beat me, and if they knew I was on TV, they would try and bruise my face up. So if I was going to go on Merv Griffin or something, they could laugh at me. So the greatest karate fighter is basically punked in the boxing gym. And what he told me that karate never taught is defense. And it's interesting because people say, oh, that's self-defense. No, it's not. The katas that you are taught are stylized representations of fighting. And they're about as effective as the fight scenes from West Side Story. To me, it's the same thing pretty much, the dancing and representing a fight. So the greatest fighter goes in these boxing gyms, and he had to learn how to block all over again. And when I started to work with him, one of the first lessons actually was when he started to teach snap and good defense. And that really made all the difference in the world. So on one hand, I'm seeing these amazing changes in my own abilities. At the same time, I'm starting to create NATMA in this early 90s, and I'm seeing these guys perpetuating what I call the smoke and mirrors of martial arts. And Joe Louis pulled back the curtain to reveal the reality of it. And obviously, when you and I had a talk a couple years ago, maybe just a year ago, about coming on board with Empower Kickboxing. Talk to me about that decision, what went into that decision, and then how you migrated over.
The first thing is like, I love Junri, and I love the Junri curriculum, and what happened was that I had a black belt that could perform every single Junri form, and he was good in sport karate. But when we were doing self-defense, he had no idea what to do, and as an instructor, I felt hypocritical, because here was a student of mine that, had spent years and thousands in tuition, and yet they did not have the ability to defend themselves in a real life. They were basically doing a point sparring stance and a self-defense when I told him to defend himself. And that's where it was like internally, I knew that I hadn't prepared him, and that kept happening over and over and over again. And that's when I think I had listened to a podcast on you talking about Empower Kickboxing. It was Dwayne Brummett and Ali, and you had came on as a guest, and you were talking a little bit about it. And so, of course, I did my research, and I looked back, and I had actually probably about 10 or 15 years ago, before you had started Empower Kickboxing, I had in a couple of your books where you had started transition over to it, some of your old books. And so I finally decided that it was the right time to make that transition after hearing that podcast. And so at that point, I had already been struggling with retention, with just that idea of having a great black belt that couldn't defend themselves, in reality. And so at that point, I was like, I needed to do this, for one, to be able to honestly talk about when I sat down with a student that you're going to be able to defend yourself here at my school and be able to say it with, to be able to mean it. I didn't know what I didn't know, but at that point, it was kind of tugging on me where I knew I was being hypocritical, and it just was eating at me at that point. And so that's when I decided to make that jump.
Yeah, there's the gap between what people consider to be self-defense and what people learn in the police academy as self-defense to become police officers is a wild chasm. It's just, they're not even in the same ballpark. So I completely echo that realization about self-defense and saying, holy cow. I keep going back to this smoke and mirrors. So when you joined Empower Kickboxing, what was your strategy to transition the students?
Well, there was a couple of things I did because I had actually was in the process of rebranding my school. So the first thing I did is I had rebranded my logo with a really, what I would say, modern student, where he's not in a karate uniform. He's basically in boxing gloves. He's wearing Nikes, and he's a cool looking kid, like a kid that you would see in school. And so that became where I completely got rid of the uniform. And so that way people could see that this is the reality of what kids are going to be, what they want, and to mirror what they saw. I don't know if that makes sense.
Really does, because that's what they're going to be wearing day to day. That's a program that's integrated into the modern lifestyle, which is so important, because I think about the people that are so dedicated to the traditions, wearing the white geese and doing the rituals. It reminds me of the Renaissance Festival. I used to be part of the Bronze Dragon stunt team, and we would do Renaissance fights. And these guys were so deep into that era that they would talk with British accents that they didn't have. They had hierarchy. They had all kinds of training systems, and it was all from the King Arthur era, which they just fantasize about. That's what I compare a lot of the traditional. They hold on to those rituals, and it's so emotional to them. But that's not the message I think the world wants to see at this particular stage. So how was the reaction to changing the uniforms first? And then we'll get into the curriculum.
Really, what I did is I stopped selling. Basically, I stopped requiring the heavyweight uniform, the all-white uniform. So the students got a chance to keep what they had. But what I started to do is I created content around the different kickboxing, the grappling, the self-defense. I created content for classes, and I created content for my social media channels. And the content that I started off with was the self-defense.
So you started with the self-defense module first,
right? Because we hadn't really focused in on it. That was the first thing I did, was implemented the self-defense in class and made that a priority, and talked about how important it is and what to prepare for. So, that became, the parents loved it, the kids loved it, because it makes sense. Not just teaching it, but like I said, is explaining kind of what you guys talk about. It's, you have 3 to 8 seconds, right? I mean, before in any self-defense altercation, you don't know where the time, place, or method is, and really reinforcing it and talking to the parent and educating them at the same time and I could see the parents nodding their head, yes, and really trying to get them involved with that portion of it, that way they could buy into the transition.
Boy, you anchor the parents in. They are so grateful that you're teaching this material to their kids, because when they hear it, it doesn't require any skill to understand time, place, and method of attack. It's one of those, holy cow, I never thought of that. Thank goodness, man, this guy knows his stuff. So self-defense was first. What was next?
Next was the warm-up, and then really focusing in on the foundation skills. That was the next part. And, it was funny. I had a conversation with one of my old students. He's a brown belt, and he was kind of into this idea of, he was with me for a couple of years with the forms and the katas, and the dad asked me yesterday, he said, so are they going to learn anything new? Because he was used to the new, a new form, a new combination every time he ranked up. And this was the conversation I had with him. Is I told him, well, let's look at an elite boxer. An elite boxer has only about 6 punches in his arsenal. Now, what makes him a world-class professional boxer is the ability to execute, to move, to add defense, to get faster and stronger. And really I had to, he was really the only one that kind of was a little concerned about the tradition, because he was so used to it. But when I explained it in that format where he could understand, it's a boxer really only has 6 basic punches, and they just become world class at it.
I tell you, if I was in a class with a 14-year-old white belt and we were doing jab, cross, uppercut, I would be just as engaged as the kid. He's working on the mechanics physically. I'm working on the little nuanced things that I know that I do, that I need to correct, and to this day. So there's, if you're going to invite Mike Tyson to your school to lead a class, he's going to be jab, cross, uppercut, head movement, footwork and things of that nature. So there's, again, not so much advanced techniques, but advanced applications. Testing. What have you done with testing in belt advancement?
Well, because this new transition, I decided to do something a little creative and with it, where since it does have this kickboxing curriculum, I wanted to elevate my graduations. And so what I decided to do is I actually treat my graduations like a fight night. Okay, so we make a big deal about it. Everybody gets their own fight name, their walk-in music, because that's what they see. Parent walks out with them. They're their coach. They're in the little ring. I put like a bell, and they do their drills for like 2 or 3 minutes, and the music's on. We get, it would be as if you were to go to a professional fight, and be able to watch a professional, but it's your kid. So it's really engaging. It's really unique. It's really different. And the parents love it. So that's what we do. It's a little bit more work, but it's fun. The kids really look forward to it, and it's different.
That's so cool.
Basically we do quarterly graduations, every 8 classes.
Just to let our listeners know that a module is 8 classes, and there are 4 modules: martial arts, kickboxing, weapons, and self-defense.
When you switched over to the websites, I know you made a upgrade to how you structured it. So that really helped.
So to what degree do you use the lesson plans? Do you follow them closely? Do you use them just kind of for ideas?
I use them. I mean, I do a lesson plan, every Monday. I make sure that I review it. I try to make sure that I know what I want to focus in on for the week. So I personally use those lesson plans because they just help me teach a better class, and it's a better structure, and I know what I'm going to do prior to class going in. So the lesson plans for me are important.
Specifically the lesson plans on the website.
Correct.
Okay, because what's really cool, super cool, is that we are incorporating my massive library of Joe Louis, professionally shot Joe Louis private lessons into the program. So when I talk advanced application, Joe Louis is advanced application. So in this post-COVID world, what would you say to a martial arts school owner who's considering upgrading to the Empower Kickboxing program?
Well, I would basically, I would talk about what you talk about my experience, about why we don't do forms. And just so you know, this was the other benefit that I found of it, because I have a really small school and I like it that way. I've had multiple schools, I've had big schools, but I prefer small footprint, high traffic type of location. It's really simple and easy to run. And with a small operational footprint, I don't have the space to be able to do katas. And so from an operational capacity standpoint, it works even better with my model, because I don't need a big space to teach how to throw a jab, cross, hook, elbow, knee. I need space is important because I have such a small space. And that's the other benefit of it, is that you don't need a large footprint, to be able to teach this type of curriculum.
Well, let's expand on that a little bit. So you mentioned some of the benefits before and after. How many classes were you teaching before? How many now? What is the enrollment process like? Has the tuition been affected? Talk about those changes, because it sounded like they had all turned for the better.
Yeah. So of course, with the old system, I had to have a beginner class. I had to have a intermediate and advanced and a black belt class. And then I was running the ninjas separately, the little ones from 4 to 6. And so I was teaching probably about 5 to 6 classes. Some of them I would always get kind of frustrated because, you'd lose a lot. At least I would lose a lot around the purple belt. And then of course my advanced belts, this allowed me, during quarantine, during COVID is, of course, I had to drop down the classes, and during COVID, it allowed me teaching online is when I actually transitioned over to Empower Kickboxing, because it was so much easier to teach than a form on Zoom. Funny is, like, when you teach, you have to do it backwards because the screen is flipped. So the kids were just, it was just a mess for anybody who was trying to teach, Zoom. I mean, I feel for you. I mean, but you got to do what you got to do. But that was the after a week of doing that, I was like, nope, I'm transitioning completely over to this system. And, teaching a jab, a cross, hook, elbow, knee, was so much easier, if you're doing it online.
What about your sales process?
Yes. So my old sales process is it was completely dependent upon me. I used to do a 3-week trial. And then during that 3-week, we do a lot of, we'd give them a lot of love, and then around the second week is I would do a one-on-one intro with them and the parent. And that's when we'd go through the enrollment. And so with this system, what ends up happening is I've dropped it down to a week. And basically on the second class is we do an enrollment. And even though I don't charge as much because I'm not able down payment, I make it a lot easier to join, and the staff does the sales process with me. So it's not sales dependent upon me, where now my front desk, we role play daily on it so that way it's not dependent on one person, as it's anybody can do the sign up now. Anybody can do the sales process.
Outstanding. So the key word, I think, is simplicity. Everything is easier to do, and that is important. And I think that is what students want as well.
Correct. That's what they're used to. That's the new norm, is simplicity.
Come join our school, and in 3 to 4 years, you'll start to understand the stuff that we're teaching you now. And you'll get a black belt in about the same time as if you went to, say, West Point and graduated after 4 years. In fact, some people can go to West Point and graduate from West Point faster than they can get a black belt at our school, and we're really proud of that. That's done. that is so last century. Okay, that's a wrap for me. If anybody's considering getting involved with Empower Kickboxing, what would you suggest to them?
Basically, I would look at, your curriculum and does it match with what, what's out there? What students are seeing today. Is it simpler? Now I only teach 2 classes. My life is a lot simpler. It's just made it a lot easier for me. And my suggestion would be give it a try.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. Continued success, and anything you need from me, please don't hesitate to contact me. Gino's done a great job transitioning from Taekwondo to Empower Kickboxing. Now it's time for the Martial Arts Teachers Association Instructor Tip of the Week. This is called No Rescues. Hi everyone, this is John Graden with the MATA Instructor Certification Program from matacertification.com. This is a universal education program for martial arts instructors that is absent from virtually every black belt exam there is. So typically we train hard, we earn a black belt, and we begin to teach. And usually we do kind of hand-me-down teaching and mimic our instructors. Eventually start to pick up some tips here and there, but there's no real universal focus on how to become a good professional martial arts teacher until now. And this is the program. It's developed by 18 experts in the fields of psychology, physiology, motivation, communication skills. And these guys are experts in those areas. Many of them are famous PhDs, but they're also all black belts. So they can take their expertise and mold it to the needs of a martial arts instructor, because the vast majority of them have been martial arts instructors. When you complete the program, you'll get a physical certificate to hang in your school. You'll get a digital certificate to distribute on social media and on your website. And we'll also put together a press release that you can let the local media know that you have achieved this certification. So let's get started. We have 2 lessons today in the same clip. So the setting is the instructor is asking the students, what is the definition of integrity? And one male student, about 10 years old, raises his hand and answers the question. Let's listen in and then find out what we can learn.
Sir.
Integrity.
Integrity means?
Honesty.
Honesty, all right? Always tell the truth. Even if we're in the wrong, always tell the truth. And the last...
So there we go. What did you notice about that 9-second interaction? She had a choice of how to ask the question, what is the definition of integrity? 1, she could have called on one specific child to answer the question. And in this case, I think the kid shot his hand up and was ready and anxious, so she called on him. So she called on one child. What does that do for the rest of the class? That's interesting, because she could call on one student, or she could ask the question to the entire class and then choose a student to answer. And this is kind of a mixture of each, because we don't know the lead up to it, but for your own edification. If I call on a student and ask, what is the definition of integrity? When I call on that student and ask that question, it takes the pressure off the rest of the students. And this is interesting and important to understand. Some of the kids won't know the answer, and since they're not called, it's kind of a relief. And I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying you want to understand the dynamics of what you're doing in class. So asking one child to answer the question takes the pressure off the other students. So when you ask the class first, okay, gang, I'm looking for the definition of integrity. And I'm scanning the room and I'm looking the room over. This forces everybody in the class to think, what the heck is the definition of integrity? So there's a difference when you ask the class versus directly asking the student. And one's not necessarily better than the other. It's just you want to understand the dynamics of what you're doing in your class. You have these choices. In some cases, maybe Joey's kind of spacing out over here, and I'll fire a question at him in order to get his attention back into class and make him more present. So understand the power of these questions. There's some choices and the underlying effects of them. Okay, so that's lesson number 1. Let's go to lesson number 2. Let's watch it again.
More. Sir.
Integrity.
Integrity means?
Honesty.
Honesty, all right? Always tell the truth. Even if we're in the wrong, always tell the truth. And the last...
Did he answer the question? He gave one-word answers. He said, I think integrity, and then the definition was honesty. So he gave one-word answer. Really, it's not a complete answer, depending on the expectations of the instructor. If the instructor is seeking a specific definition of integrity and not a general one, usually that's kind of scripted. So the whole class knows that integrity is doing the right thing even when no one's watching. That would be an example of a defined answer, and that would be the one you're looking for. That wasn't the case here, and he gave one-word answers. So what happened when he gave the one-word answers? She immediately finished the answer for him. His answer fell short, so she pulled his answer up. So imagine kid falls off the side of the boat, you reach in, you grab the child, and you pull the child up. So when you do that in an answer, when he answered with just one word, she completed the answer for him. That's called pulling up or rescuing. And you want to make sure that you're not rescuing students. You want them to perform to your standards. So be patient and let the students answer the questions instead of rescuing them. That's just a sample of the things that you'll learn with the MATA certification course at matacertification.com. That wraps up another episode of The Truth About the Martial Arts Business. I hope you liked it. If so, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a good review. Be sure also to visit martialartsteachers.com and empowerkickboxing.com. Thanks very much for listening.